the deaf community in Nigeria, it is a different story. So, a lot of deaf people grow up learning only the variety of sign language that they are taught in school, whereby they claim it is American Sign Language. But when you travel out of Nigeria, you find out that every country claims their own sign language. Every deaf community in different country, they claim their own sign language. America is proud to say, we sign American Sign Language. Australia, Australian Sign Language. Ghana, Ghanaian Sign Language. China, Chinese Sign Language. Korean Sign Language. And when you get into these countries, you now have a variety of languages that are a component of that American Sign Language, Australian Sign Language, and all that. It is only in Nigeria whereby the language of the deaf people is considered a foreign sign language. Now, this deceives a lot of people. And people think when you hear sign language, it is American Sign Language. Even amongst the deaf people, some deaf people argue that sign language is American Sign Language. I mean, in Nigeria, what in your own self? That is the problem. And now, that is even the surface structure of the problem. The deep structure of this problem is deaf children that are born deaf, that became deaf as children, they have what we call cognitive development deficiency. They have what we call linguistic development deficiency. Why is that? Because when a child grows up without language, in the first 5 years of that child's life, that child is going to have linguistic and cognitive problem. Scientifically proven. When a child is growing up with no access to language, the first 5 years passes, it will be difficult for that child not to grow up as an adult lacking cognitive skills. And if you, with the testimony and witness of our deaf individuals, if you assess our deaf community, the deaf individuals, if you have close interactions with them, so many of them that grew up that way, you will assess their low intelligibility. And this is a problem we want to solve. It is a lifetime problem. It is a deep one. The understanding of it is even very uncommon. But that's the problem we have taken to see how we can solve it. We started documenting sign language in Nigeria in 2016. That was when we started documenting the varieties in school. We started comparing it with some other sign languages we have been familiar with. We really found out that the piece of language that is taught in deaf schools has American Sign Language vocabulary with English word structure. A confliction. It is full of American Sign Language vocabulary. Now, let me give you a practical example of what I mean. Every language dwells in the culture of a community. Now, let me use some of the things we know here. Now, if you are familiar with some of the products of food, fruits, or whatever we grow here, or crops in Nigeria, you will know what comes where. In Nigeria today, if we talk about onion, we know where it grows, right? If we talk about tomato, we know where it grows. If we talk about which would they chop amala, we know which would they chop amala, not be so. If we talk about kola nuts, which would they use kola nut make receipt case, we know where that one will come from. So all these are ideologies that are carried along by our culture. Nigeria is a multicultural country, but we respect one another and respect one another's culture because we have seen ourselves as a country. Now, let's say, for instance, there's what we call tiger nut in this country, right? in my language, we call it Akiausa. Good. Who knows what it is called in their language? Who can help us? Yes.
Calabar, we call it Isibiso.
Isibiso. Thank you, sister. I like that. Who else has what is called in their language? Val, what do you call it? You don't know. But you know what I'm talking about? Taginot. Fine. What do you call it?
Land.
You don't know.
You have to find out.
You don't know. You don't know. You know what I'm talking about? But you don't know.
Aya.
Aya. Fine. Aya is it Hausa?
No, it's Hausa.
Hausa. Do you have a name for it? Well, he's from Igbo, so it's Aki Hausa, that's what we call it. Aya. Good. Now, that thing that is popular around Nigeria, I often use it as, example. It's produced where? Which part of the country? In the north, right? And it circulates. Many people eat it. I process milk out of it. I happen to know that deaf people in Nigeria don't have a name for it. Generally, except in the core communities. Like Nigerian Sign Language, if there's anything like that, doesn't have a name for it, but they do what? Finger spell it. Right? So in one of my interactions, I asked them, why don't you have a name for this thing? It's an example. He said, I said, okay, because you are waiting for Americans to give you the name. Now you sign it. That is an example of what language in the deaf community is. The language that the deaf in Nigeria learn in school contains cultural pieces, cultural things, items, artifacts, products that are foreign to our community. Because language carries its culture. Language is culture. And when they, for instance, let me use the word snow. We hear about it because snow is English, right? American Sign Language has snow, the sign for snow. But, Governor, have you seen snow before? Sure, snow don't touch you before?
Physical. Very physical.
Yeah, not physical. And if you have not left the shore of this country, snow will not touch you. Unless the snow come fall for Nigeria today. And if you fall, maybe some people hide. Now, the language piece that they learn is that contains things like a child learning what a snow is, even when they may not see it in their lives. You might think it's English, but the sign for snow in American Sign Language is American Sign Language, not English. That is a confusion. So the language contains something like winter, summer, which the people in Nigeria do not know what they are all about. But that's what the child will spend time in school learning. The names for drinks that they may not drink in their lives. The names for food that they may not eat in their lives. The names for relationship that they may not have in their lives. But does not contain the names for the things they are familiar with. I grew up in the village. I grew up having an experience of going into the bush to search for palm kernel. And we'll come back and break palm kernel. We'll eat it with either garri or you use it to drink garri. Our Yoruba sisters and brothers, they know how to soak garri, right? Now, the expression to soak garri or drink garri should have a sign in our indigenous language, in our Nigerian language. Any piece of item that is not represented in American Sign Language that is taught in Nigeria does not have a name. And this is the problem with the deaf people, deaf community, sign language in Nigeria.